these meetings. So if you have a neighbor or anybody who wasn't able to join us tonight and would like to see the information that we're going to be presenting to you, you'll have an opportunity to do that. Give us a couple of days, probably first part of next week. We will have this meeting uploaded onto the NDOT traffic calming website along with all the others, so you can access that if you need to. So I guess we're ready to get started. This is Oaks Drive traffic calming program, project. And we're going to do three things here, Mila and I. We should be done. We should inside of an hour, by the way. And in doing that, we're going to cover three major things tonight. One is a little bit of an overview of the traffic calming program and specifically how Oaks Drive got into the program. I'm going to show you some of the tools that we have at our disposal in this program. And then lastly, and where we usually spend most of our time, I guess, is looking at the concept, very preliminary concept that we have put together for the street. We'd like to get your reactions to that. If you're not muted and you don't mind, if you could just mute yourself. We leave these open. You're welcome to unmute anytime as we go through the presentation and ask a question. I also keep the chat box. If you know how to use that, I keep that up. And so feel free to type your question or comment if you'd rather do that. But in the meantime, if you would just mute, that'll keep it a little cleaner. I'm going to go ahead and stop my video as well, just to preserve any bandwidth. But hey, everybody, I'm here. Let's get started. A little bit about the traffic calming program. This is a residential street program that is administered by NDOT. That is to say, we don't really do this on commercial streets or industrial areas. We really focus on residential streets because, as we know, speeding can be a real quality of life issue on some streets in Nashville. And we do focus on physical solutions. I'm going to show you some of the tools, and some of those do kind of focus on education and reminders that, hey, you're going too fast. But we found that nothing really slows traffic down quite as well as if we do something, make a physical change to the street. And so that's really what we focus on. I'm sure you all by now are familiar with some of the things that we have deployed in the past, and so that's what we're here to talk about. And then lastly, speed reduction. That sounds obvious, it kind of is, but that's as opposed to trying to push traffic to other streets. Sometimes people say, there's just too many cars. We don't really change that. There's not a lot we can do about that. What we really focus on is just slowing traffic down that is already on the street. As I mentioned, there are a couple of different aspects to traffic calming. We know that. We don't focus a lot on these others, mostly because they're outside of the control of this department. What NDOT does is focus on the right-of-way, and that is, engineering changes to the infrastructure that we find on the street. We know enforcement is a huge part of that. And a lot of times we hear, why can't we just have Metro come down here and park a cruiser and write a few tickets? And as much as that would help, at least in the limited term, for a limited time period, they just don't have a lot of those resources to use. Unfortunately, they're out there doing very important work, as we all know, and traffic enforcement's not often a big part of that on some of our residential streets. And then, as I mentioned, also education. We do kind of dip our toe into that, but we leave some of the public service announcements and those kinds of things to others. And NDOT does work in that area, but we really focus on the engineering with this program. And one of the reasons we do is shown here. This is a graphic we like to use just to remind people about the impacts, hopefully not the devastating impacts, but they certainly can be, of speeding in residential areas. When you think about what happens in a car versus pedestrian crash, if that car is traveling down around 20 to 25 miles an hour, the chance of survival is way up compared to some of the other speeds that they could be doing. So we're always mindful that there are more than just drivers using these streets, and it seems like now more than ever. We've got pedestrians and bicyclists all over, and unfortunately, we're seeing um, some pretty negative results from crash statistics ever since COVID, really. And that's not just us; that's a national phenomenon. But we're doing what we can to mitigate some of those safety issues. This is very much an in-demand program. I don't know exactly when Oaks Drive put in the application, but as of our latest cohort that has gone through, we've got over 500 streets all across Davidson County that are having some of the same issues that you all are having there on your street. So you're not alone. That's not a good thing. I guess it's a good thing that you were ranked high enough to receive some assistance here through this program, but it's really too bad you're having those issues. Just want you to know you're not alone. There's a lot of competition for the limited dollars that we have in this. We do about 100, about 50 neighborhoods per year typically, but this past year there was some surplus funds that council saw fit to allocate to additional projects in traffic calming because it is such an in-demand program. And your council member, Courtney Johnston, is one of those. She's a big supporter of the program. She told me to pass along the fact that she apologizes she couldn't be here tonight. She had some family issues to take care of. And she really is at most of these in her district, and so um, she is a supporter of the program. I do like to point out this aspect, which is Hub Nashville, because sometimes people will want to engage the traffic calming program to get additional stop signs or to request sidewalks. And while those, have some associated impact with what we're doing, those are really come from different offices, different buckets of money, and so forth. The way to access those services, though, is kind of the same way. You request those, and the best way to do that is through hub.Nashville.gov. If you've never used that, it's a great resource for residents of Davidson County. You can also call and talk to someone at 311. Just tell them of your issue. They'll get that to the right department, the right person. That's the easiest way to make a request of our metro government. So we always like to plug that. But in traffic calming, I mentioned that it is somewhat of a competitive program, just because we don't have the time and the funds to deal with those 500 requests. We have to whittle that number down to something that's a little more manageable. And the way we do that is through this system of data and prioritization. You see how the scoring is determined here. It's 70% of the score is really based on data that you would figure it probably is based on. That is the volume of traffic that's on the street. We measure that. And that is the speed that the traffic is moving on the street. We measure that. Those two things make up 70% of our score. The other 30% has to do with some of those other issues we were talking about earlier. Is there a known pedestrian crash on the street? If there is, that boosts you up in the ranking. Are there, when it says non-driver accommodations, are there things like sidewalks? Are there transit lines nearby? You guys have bicycle lanes. You don't have sidewalks, but you got bike lanes. Those types of things, the presence of those actually decreases you, with the philosophy being, well, if a street has sidewalks, traffic may be going too fast, but at least people have a place to walk. And so that's not the case on many Nashville streets. And then the last part of that is trip destinations. Are there things close by that someone may want to make a walking trip to? Shopping opportunities, transit service, schools, parks, those kinds of things. So we look at all of that. We map all of that, take all of that data, and roll it into this scoring system. And Oaks Drive, because of what we found, qualified for some attention from the program. And here's the data. Here's the data specific to your street that we found. 85th percentile speed is just kind of a statistical way we look at this to say, 15% of the cars are going faster than 39 miles an hour. That's that's fairly high, as we, in the selection of streets that we work on, 39 is on up there. I mean, if you think about it, if you're trying to drive, you drive almost 40 miles an hour down Oaks Drive, that's pretty fast. Um, it's not the fastest we see. We see, as y'all can imagine, we see some streets that are moving a little faster than that. But anyway, that's up there. But you've got a pretty low traffic volume. It's almost a dead end, as you all know. It goes up and serves the apartments and I guess loops around and does join into other streets. But there's just not a lot of residents and things to access up the hill there. So the traffic volume is just a little over 500 vehicles a day. That may sound like a lot. Usually, when we tell people how much traffic is on their street, they're surprised it's that much. But that's on the lower end of streets that we typically work with. And your street is wider than most. It's 38 feet. We know a big part of that has to do with that buffer area and then the bike lanes. And all of that just kind of comes into play when we start thinking about how we would lay out a traffic calming project. And I'll show you that in just a minute. And it's a fairly short street. We're going to go from Fox Ridge down to Old Hickory Boulevard, which is pretty much the length of Oaks Drive, but that's just not quite a third of a mile. And here's an image that shows that. So let me explain this map. This map is it's an interactive map that is available for you to use and access on the NDOT traffic calming website. You can look at all the projects all over the county. And the color coding is like this. So Oaks Drive is the green one right there in the middle, runs north-south. And so that shows the limits of our project from Fox Ridge up to Old Hickory Boulevard. The reason it's green and like any line in this whole map, all designated the same way, just means that there is a traffic calming project that is in development. It's been selected. It's in development at some stage, maybe brand new, maybe about to be installed, but it's in the works. The blue lines, the blue dash lines, that's Valley View that you see here that goes down and does that hard 90-degree turn. Y'all are probably familiar with that. That is a street that has had traffic calming applied. And so, as you all probably know, we did speed cushions on that street a little while ago. And the reason we map those and keep those mapped is so that if you're looking at this, interested in this, concerned about this, whatever the case may be, those are there so you can go drive on them, see them, experience them, do whatever you want to with that. And then the purple lines are streets that have been applied for. Someone has requested traffic calming on those streets, but it has not yet been selected. So I think that's Fredericksburg there that has an application in. So if you're ever wondering, the street, I wonder if anyone has applied for it or if it'd make a good street. You don't have to reapply once it's in there and on that map. So that's how you read that. And again, it's interactive. You can pan all over and you can see other projects that may be near you or may have been completed nearby. All right, I'm going to move now to some of the tools that we have in our toolbox when we start putting together a potential project on a street. And we start with this one. This is really the bread and butter of our program. It's used, more than 95% of projects, this is the measure that we use. I mean, many people probably think now that the traffic calming program is pretty much the speed cushion program. They wouldn't be wrong. We use these all the time for a couple of reasons. They're very known in that they are consistent. These are manufactured. We don't site build our speed humps and speed cushions in Davidson County. We used to. You guys have a street pretty close to you, Overton Road, that still has some site-built speed humps on them that have been there for a number of years. But we don't do that anymore. We get this product is consistent, so we know exactly, the shape of it, how it's going to perform. It's durable. We've had really, really good success. They stay looking good over a period of time, and so we have this from the same vendor, and so we're using the same speed cushion material all over Davidson County. It's only about 3 inches tall, but most people that are very familiar with these would tell you that's enough to be effective. They come in a 6-foot width that is just a little bit wider than the wheelbase of most vehicles. And so, try as people might, they can't drive around these. They're going to be forced to encounter them in some way. That's the whole point. If they can drive around them, then we haven't done our job very well. We can also get them in different lengths. The shorter they are, the more aggressive they are, and a slower speed you'll get. So the shortest they make is a 7-foot cushion. We really reserve those for some of our most urban neighborhoods closer to downtown, East Nashville, Germantown, those types of areas where you just got a lot going on that we really want to bring about a very slow speed. 10.5 cushion is that's our default. We always start there and then decide, do we need to do something different than that? But that's what we use in most applications now. And then 14, we do have some in some more rural areas of the county where maybe it's signed at 30 miles an hour. We're trying to bring about a 30 to maybe even 35 miles an hour. So the longer they are, the more comfortable and the least aggressive, and therefore the higher the speed is going to be over those. They do come in different configurations. You see here a couple of examples of a 2-cushion arrangement or a 3-cushion arrangement, or down in the bottom right-hand picture, cushions with little plastic delineators out beside them, or in the upper left-hand picture, you see our sign assembly. All of that has to do with the width of the road, going back to the idea that one thing we don't want to allow to have happen is enough space that someone could drive through these or drive around these. And so that's the whole point of all of that. It's not like if you have a 3-cushion, you're just getting more. It's really about what's gonna be most effective for the street. The last thing I would say about this, I mentioned they're 6 feet wide, and I said most vehicles are going to have to encounter those. There are some special vehicles that we want to minimize the impact to, and those are our fire trucks, our ambulances, those vehicles that are performing a very important role for us, that have a wider wheelbase. They're not totally immune, but they are less affected. They can come closer to straddling these than other types of vehicles. And that's the whole point about making these things, have brakes in them the way they do. So it's less impact to those emergency response vehicles. The fire department, the police department, EMS, they know we're out here and they're supportive of the work we do. But we do coordinate with them on the types of products we're putting out on the street. Very close cousin to the speed cushion is the speed table, made by the same vendor, made out of the same materials. It's just a little bit different shape and configuration. We don't use these much. You will find them in some special places like parks, where that emergency service provision is not nearly as emphasized. And so, but otherwise it works about the same. You drive up and over it, and they are a little bit longer. These I think there's a 7-foot speed table and a 14-foot. They don't have that middle ground. So that is another tool. We just don't use those very often. We have a little bit of before and after data. As engineers, we always want more. We'd love to have more data, but what we have is pretty good. Probably the thing for you to do is go out and find some of these if you've never driven across them, and just see, how you react to them as a driver. But what we're finding is that on average, we're seeing drivers react to them in the order of something like 9 to 12 miles an hour lower than what they were doing before. But it really can depend widely based on the street configuration, how closely they're spaced, the type of car. Everybody's going to drive these just a little bit differently, but the main point here is the before and after data shows that they're effective, and it remains effective over a long period of time. This is not like something that like ticket writing that is very effective while the cop's there, but then a week and a half later that effectiveness has pretty well gone away. These stay very effective measures. Another one that the jury's still out on the lasting effectiveness of them is a radar feedback sign. We do use these. You've seen these probably around Creve Hall, pretty close to you. They do a good job of reminding people how fast they're going. And what we typically rely on these to do, two things, I guess. One is on streets that have a 35 or higher mile-an-hour speed. We don't do raised devices like we were just talking about on those faster streets. And so we might deploy something like a feedback sign. But the other way we use these is when other conditions preclude us from using things like speed cushions. We don't put speed cushions on steep hills or sharp curves, or sometimes we have conditions where there's just like one driveway after the next, and there's just not room because we don't want to block somebody's driveway with one of those. And so we might resort to using one of these as kind of a stopgap measure when conditions don't let us use something else. So that's typically how we use feedback signs, but it can be an effective tool. Occasionally we will introduce pavement marking where it's not there. You guys already have a lot of pavement marking on your street. There's no center line, I don't think, but you have edge lines in the bike lanes and all of that. The whole point that we try to achieve with pavement marking is to reinforce the idea that it is maybe a narrower street than what it actually is. We know that drivers, when they see a big wide expanse of pavement and it's very clear and they can see everything, they have a tendency to go faster. If, however, it feels like it's a narrower street, and you think about streets downtown that have parked cars and all of that kind of thing, that tends to make drivers go slower. So sometimes we'll use paint to try and give the sense that it's a narrow street. We have to be careful though. This picture is kind of a good example. If we introduce a center line on the street, the yellow lines down the middle, that sometimes communicates to people that it is a more major street and it's okay to go faster. So people kind of see that both ways, and so we have to be pretty judicious on introducing new pavement markings as part of these projects. More urban areas, we have some other tools, some bulb outs that in the picture on the left, where we try to, again, artificially narrow the street, especially at intersections. Sometimes these streets have been built just really wide, and so it's very easy for someone to not stop or take those corners very quickly and enter a street at a high rate of speed. So sometimes bulb outs can help that, and also help pedestrians as well. In chicanes, the picture on the right is a very unique thing. Again, not one we introduce very often at all. There are a couple of streets in the county that have these, but artificially meanders traffic back and forth. If you've got a wide street, you've got some on-street parking, it can be effective, but pretty specialized tool there. In traffic circles, we have used a few over the past few years, but this is one where, like any traffic calming, we really have to try and think through what some of the consequences, and what we have found on some traffic circles and putting them in is the one road user that seems to have the most difficulty with these are school buses. And so, but a lot of people, it's unclear. Do I turn in front of it? Do I turn around it? How do I navigate these? And so, NDOT has not been using many of these over the past couple of years, and just kind of continuing to evaluate the ones that have been installed, how effective they are. You have to have a big intersection with a lot of pavement for this to work very well. I don't think any of that's really fitting here on the street. So here's the plan. It's about as basic as we get, but that is not at all unusual for the types of projects that we are looking at right now in the county. Again, it's about a third of a mile street, and so that lends itself to a pretty straightforward application of 3 sets of speed cushions. And let me talk about how we arrive at that. What we do is we look at the entire length of the project. If you have like an always stop or something like that along the length of Oaks Drive, which you don't, but if you did, we would look at the distance between those points, between places where traffic has to come to a stop, and then we measure that, and then we divide that by what we want our spacing to be. When we're putting in speed cushions, on a street like this, but really on any street in Nashville. We know that if we can have a gap in between of somewhere around 300 to 500 feet, then we're about right. We don't want them so close together that they're just totally obnoxious and might push traffic somewhere else, and they're going to be a pain to you guys who have to drive over them every day and multiple times every day. And at the same time, we don't want them so far apart that they really lose their effectiveness, that people might slow down right at that point, but then they just speed right back up and to get to the next one. If we can space them somewhere around 400 feet, we are finding that that is a good, slow progress traffic that most people, not foolproof, but most people will not see it to their advantage to speed up, significantly in between each of these. They will just proceed up the street, hopefully at about 20, 25 miles an hour, and go about their way. And that's what we're seeing largely. And so we take this distance of it's about 1,600 feet from Fox Ridge to the signal there at Old Hickory Boulevard, and kind of divide that up so that we've got right at a 400-foot spacing on this project. The two end ones will usually cheat towards the ends of the project just a little bit. So if people turn onto Oaks Drive from Old Hickory Boulevard, they'll encounter that first one usually a little bit sooner than 400 feet. We just don't want to get too deep into the neighborhood before they recognize that this is a traffic calm street. And the same on the other edge for traffic, on the other end for people coming from Fox Ridge before they encounter their first speed cushion. So that's it. It's a set of 3 cushions is what we are proposing. I want to show you one other aspect which is a little unique to your street, and that is dealing with the width that we have here. And here's what we would suggest, but we certainly, I'm gonna shut up here in a minute and see what questions or input you have on this. But here's what we're thinking about how to deal with the width of it. Right now, I believe, I've not been out on the street. Conditions being what they are, I haven't been able to get out on the street. I usually do that a few days before this meeting, but I think it's about 20 feet of driving surface in between the two inside white lines, which would be pretty typical. On the outside of that buffer area is about 3 feet, and the bike lane, I think, is about 6 feet. I will verify that, but it looks to me like it's about a 20-foot wide road and 2 9-ish foot bike lanes and so forth. So what I would suggest is the speed cushions be centered up. And by the way, the schematic there on the left is I took that from a set of plans that we did for a street that has an almost identical cross section. That's over in Sylvan Park. It's 42nd Avenue, and it's the same width, about 38 feet from curb to curb, and a 20-foot wide driving surface. So borrowing from that, what we did there was use 2 plastic delineators to go on the outside of the speed cushions. That still leaves the bike lane open. It still leaves, all of that works just like it does today. Again, the only objective there, the point we're trying to do there, is to keep people from driving around them. We could put additional cushions to the outside and have kind of like a 4 wide. I just think that kind of gets in the way if you're trying to walk along this section of road. And, I don't know, just think it looks a little funny to have a speed cushion over there in the bike lane. So I think that would be a better approach. But all right, I think you guys get the idea. What have I not covered, or what do you have questions about or concerns about on this?
Hey, Jeff, this is William. Can you hear me?
I can, William. Go ahead.
First of all, thank you for answering my email questions. You've been great. You've answered a lot of stuff, and you've been very helpful prior to this meeting. Looking at this slide, what you've got with the 2 tubular markers on the bicycle lanes, is there a way to longitudinally add these reboundable tubular markers or delineators up and down the roadway, probably 50 feet, and angle them to try to discourage drivers from driving into the bike lane instead of putting a tubular marker inside of the bike lane like you have it?
and have more of a consistent treatment in that that hatched out buffer area?
Inside the channelized area in between the bike lane and through lane, if we could maybe 50 feet or so, install 4 or 5 down there, and then on the edge line closest to the roadway, and then angle 1 or 2 over towards the edge line between the bike lane and the channelized area.
It's possible, and there are other tools that we have to try and keep traffic from. Or is that what you're finding? You're finding cars are kind of drifting over into the bike lane?
Actually, no, not at all. I'm glad we're not putting a center
On the
line,
coal.
center line on this, because you know, pretty much anybody on this call probably would recognize me. I'm the guy that walks up and down this road twice a day. Most cars actually, when they see a pedestrian on this roadway, they drive in the middle of the travel lanes. So I'm glad we don't have a center double yellow proposed on here. And so I rarely ever see anybody car get into the channelized area or to the bike lane, except at Fox Ridge, which I have another question or proposal for Fox Ridge later on. But no, I don't see any cars really getting into that channelized area in between the bike lane and through lanes.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure I'm following the use of additional delineators in outside of the places where we would be doing them at the cushions.
Yes.
I may just need to catch up with you offline on that, but
Okay.
to make sure I understand that. But to answer the question, I mean, yeah, with this program we can do. They let us get a little bit creative, not a whole lot, but yeah, if there's better ways to channelize that and make sure
Anna's
that
making
cars
supper,
are not
buddy.
driving around those locations, then yeah, we're all ears on that.
Awesome. Yeah. Especially if you come out here, I'd love to kind of walk this with you and look at this. Like I said, I've been walking up and down this road for the last 4 years. So I've seen it all. I know that.
Did you have another question about Fox Ridge?
Yeah, I guess while we're talking about it, can you go back to slide 16? Or it had page number 16.
There it is. That one?
There we go. So the bulb outs. Walking around the Oaks Drive Fox Ridge intersection, what I'd notice and what I know is a safety issue is vehicles on Oaks making a right turn onto Fox Ridge always cut that corner. They always seem to drive into the bike lane. The channelized area narrows to where it's just the bike lane, but they always kind of they cut the corner too short. And so what you've got here is a few delineators inside that channelized area, and something like that on both sides of Oaks, because vehicles coming from Fox Ridge onto Oaks also swing wide into the channelized area, into the bike lane, headed back towards Old Hickory. That if we could put some tubular markers inside that channelized area at that intersection, that would definitely be helpful from what I witness out there.
Okay. That I can kind of see it here. That is pretty wide intersection there, so we can certainly look at that and see if and you're saying it's the right turn from well, I mean, I guess both. The right turn from Oaks to Fox Ridge and the left from Fox Ridge to Oaks.
Yeah, the right from Oaks onto Fox Ridge, you can see where the channelized area narrows down to where it's just the bike lane. They usually cut that corner, and they're driving right next to the curb line when they're making a right off Oaks onto Fox Ridge. And so when I'm walking down the hill, facing traffic on the, I guess, north side of the road, I always slow down or walk right next to the curb, because I know so many people cut the corners. And also vehicles coming down Fox Ridge, they'll swing wide, making a left onto Oaks. They'll swing into that channelized area and almost into the bike lane a lot of the times, mainly when there's another car coming. they'll swing wide to avoid that car that's making a right onto Fox Ridge. So something to try to help keep vehicles from or encourage vehicles to stay within the travel lanes just at those two areas. That's something I routinely see.
Okay, that sounds good. Appreciate that.
Yeah, they're definitely doing a California roll right there, coming off of Fox Ridge onto Oaks, because it's a downhill grade as well, and they don't stop at that stop sign very rarely, and they just keep coming. And most of them, the problem we're having is most of them are on two wheels when they make that turn, and that's just a straightaway from right there, as you say, 3/4 of a mile, and they just gas it all the way down to Old Hickory Boulevard. I've seen them. I've been here for 18 or 19 years on Oaks Drive. By the way, this is Keith Cummings, and no one comes down here hardly ever 25 miles an hour.
Yeah, this is William. I was talking to Ken and Marito a while, and usually I don't like speed cushions just because they make noise and they are jarring. I mean, you having to drive over them on a daily basis. But when Jeff sent me the traffic data on this, my tune really kind of changed on it, because the amount of speeding that goes on this roadway, it was kind of alarming. I don't realize it walking up and down, because like I said, most of the time the cars will move over and drive down the center of the road. So I don't feel as unsafe but when there's two cars coming by, then yeah, it could be a little harrowing. So the data is kind of alarming. I know Jeff hinted at on one of the first slides about the 85th percentile being 39 miles per hour. So it's I'm more on board with this. I think this is actually a pretty good plan.
And with that being said, a lot of the people that live, of course, up in those apartments up there, which is under construction right now, we have no idea how many units they're adding to that apartment complex. That average of traffic coming down Oaks Drive is definitely going to change as soon as they have that project completed up there. So yeah, an average of if it's an average of 39 miles an hour, what are we looking at here? Most people are doing 45.
No, what we were saying is that the data shows that 15% of the traffic that's on here is going faster than 39. So a whole lot of people. I don't have the average in front of me, but it's going to be something less than that. So most people are driving. I mean, it's not 25. Don't get me wrong. It's way faster than that. But what that's saying is that we use that 85th percentile to say, if 15% of the people are going above a certain thing, and we say that certain speed is too fast, then we call that a speeding problem, essentially. And so at 39 miles an hour, we don't really make any call about that, other than we rank it against everybody else, and so it was higher than a whole lot of other streets. So yeah, it's pretty fast.
And as far as like speed limit signs on here, as you come off of Fox Ridge going north, there is not a speed limit sign all the way down, period.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes we'll take that, and we can go ahead and do like a hub request, and they will take a look at that and install one.
To Ken and Will's point, that corner there is even more difficult because Ken lives there and there's a privacy fence, so there's no visibility at all. So I'm up and down the street every day too with two dogs, and that's just been a difficult corner, because if you go on the other side of the road, the cars coming down Fox Bridge are flying, and you've got your back to traffic. So that, yeah, I feel like something even on Oaks, as you turn right and as you come down Fox Ridge and turn left, is essential, because that's the only place we almost get killed regularly.
Well,
That's one thing, Jeff. This is William. I was going to recommend, or I was actually going to put it on the Hub Nashville because I didn't think you might put it in this program, but at least a supplemental cross traffic does not stop sign on that stop sign on Fox Ridge Drive might help a little bit. I mean, it probably won't help much, but because we do occasionally have people coming around that cul-de-sac.
Yeah, I suspect that's why people just, I mean, it's probably 7 meetings out of 10 we go to, somebody will say, yeah, but that stop sign we got on our street, nobody stops at it. So that's not at all uncommon. But I feel like in this case, not that I don't believe it there, but I certainly believe it because there's no conflicting traffic. If you're coming down Fox Ridge, there's never anybody coming from the right, very, very rarely. And so you know that. And so you just sort of keep rolling through the stop sign. So we'll definitely take a look at that intersection and see if there's something we can do from a striping and the delineators to try and enforce a slowdown there. I think that's really good. That's really helpful.
Question on that area is a lot of the traffic that goes up and down the road, and people who are regularly on the road will notice, are people turning off of Old Hickory trying to get around traffic and don't realize there's no outlet. And they get angry, they turn around in the cul-de-sac and go flying back down. So
That's true.
that is the cause, in my observation. I've lived here 10 years, and that is consistently the cause, especially when that extra lane was added to Old Hickory. And they couldn't continue. So if there was a more obvious signage, and I think sometimes they're forced to turn there because they're trying to cut in, but I think that's probably a large percentage of the traffic that we do see daily.
Is there a no outlet sign posted now?
There is one, but it's not prominent. I think it's on, I don't even know where it is. I remember seeing it.
You're kind of on the street before you see it.
No, you don't see it.
Yeah, I don't know that there's one at all. I think there's a no dumping sign right there for that cul-de-sac, isn't there? There's nothing that would deter anybody from
and
coming
they come
down
back
through.
and they're angry. So that
they're very angry.
leads to it. Yeah.
And I wonder if that's still going on now that TDOT so Jeff, there used to be a drop lane. So coming from the interstate towards Oaks, it was a drop lane. So it was a right turn onto Oaks. Now that's a through right. So I don't know, but they just completed that. I mean, just several months ago. So I don't know if we'll continue to see that traffic come down and be forced to make a right because they could never merge over left out of that drop lane. So I think that issue may kind of be alleviated now that TDOT's completed that project.
Will, and I'm still seeing it. There may be a slight decrease, but we'll see over time, I guess.
Speaking of the speed humps, looking at the diagram, I like the way that they're spread out because they're not really necessarily right in front of somebody's house. If you look at them, there's like in between gaps of the houses right there. I did talk to a couple of people that were concerned that these younger kids with the big mufflers would slow down, and then of course they'd gas it to the next one, and and so it's like just the revving of the motor, I guess, with the mufflers. But the way that they look, they don't look like they're just like dead in front of anybody's home down through here. And we're also really scared about these Kristen Lane and stuff where people are pulling out onto here, onto Oaks Drive, although they may not have an input or an Oaks Drive address. They have concerns and have had to brake suddenly, to keep from getting broadsided. People are, moving fairly, too fast down through here. So I like the way that you have it spaced out with the signs and whatever else you can put out there to keep people from going around the signs into the bike lane or what have you. The corner that the folks are talking about here on Fox Ridge, That's definitely a problem because, like we were speaking before, they come around through there. They already have momentum heading towards Old Hickory Boulevard.
Right.
Is Katie, are you on here?
Yes, sir.
So what kind of input do you have for Jeff on this?
I love this design. One of the speed humps will be, adjacent to my property, but that's fine with me. I've got 2 school age kids and I can't send them out to play anywhere close to the road. It's just not safe at all. So I appreciate your efforts to make it a little more safe. My dog and I have been on a walk, and this usually happens at night because dogs have to pee at all times. And people fly through here going 70, 80 miles an hour. And he and I have both jumped in the grass. So I think it happens more at night that they can't see the sides. And so it's dangerous for those of us who don't get to pick what hour we're walking our dog on the side of the road. So.
Yeah.
Hey, this is
understood.
Scarlett. I have a question about specifically what Katie just said. Can you advance to the next slide that shows the diagram of the cushions and then the little tubular, whatever you're calling them? So my concern here is if you have those 2 white bars that are there in the bike lane, we have a lot of neighbors that have 2 dogs or that push strollers. And I feel like with those white bars there, it's going to make our neighbors move into the traffic to get through those white bars. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, it does. I don't, I mean, that is from the edge of the lane over to the curb is about 9 feet. That's a lot of room. That's about as wide as the lane itself is. Those bars, they're about 4 inches wide is all. The base is a little bit wider than that. So, and then the one over there by the curb is probably only a foot or so in. We want to leave as much unobstructed room as we can. And I think you're going to have a good 5 to 6 feet of totally unobstructed bike lane there. And so
How tall are they?
about a yard tall. They're about.
Oh, that's not tall. I mean, you could get a leash over that for sure.
Yeah.
Diagram shows 4 feet between them.
4 feet between them. Yeah, in that application, and that's why I need to get out here and make some measurements. But we don't want to leave any more than 4 to 5 feet maybe, because it starts looking wide enough, and some of these knuckleheads will try to shoot through the middle of those things. But yeah, it's going to be at least that wide. So which is it's kind of a small sidewalk. Standard sidewalk's about 5 feet. So.
Is it necessary to have the one that is actually in the bike lane versus maybe putting 2 in the striped area?
It may not be. I mean, again, we'll just look at that distance, and if we can kind of cut it to where typically I think I don't have any evidence that shows this, but I think drivers are not going to want to drive over next to that curb. I think people do some foolish things, but they don't want to mess their car up typically. So we very well could get by with one of those, and maybe just cheat it over just on the other side of the lane line of the buffer line or something. I don't know. We can look at that, but I hear the concern about just trying to do everything we can to minimize encroachment in that bike lane and I suspected this was the case. You walk in it. You may not be riding a bike in it, but people walk in it, kind of use it almost like a sidewalk.
We do have
Right.
not many, but we do have people that ride their bikes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that's a good point on the pole next to the speed humps there. If it could go towards the curb a little bit, I don't think that a car would have nowhere near enough room to avoid going up and over the curb into the grass there, and folks that are walking 2 dogs or what have you would have plenty of room to walk past there without any issues whatsoever. But I mean, I like that because that definitely deters them from getting over, from coming over there And I think the whole thing is a deterrent for people because I gotta admit, I used to, cut through Valley View all the time, and I avoid it I avoid it big time now. I mean, traffic just has to be completely backed up on Old Hickory Boulevard for me to want to cut through there if I'm headed over towards church, over into the Brentwood area or what have you. So it's not that those speed bumps are, are bottom, your car doesn't really bottom out, but there it's just a inconvenience to slow down and go over the bump. So I think a lot of the traffic would avoid coming down through here just for that fact right there, in my opinion.
Jeff, we have had someone, so I'm at near the bump in the middle of the road. We have had someone pass the school bus with the stop sign out and pass in the bike lane while my 8-year-old
Yeah.
child was getting off the bus and crossing the street. So
It's
I
true.
think having those poles will prevent people who like passing buses, but that's the only bus stop on our street.
Okay. Just right
Um,
there,
Keith-
right there in the middle of the street.
Right in the middle of the
Yeah.
street. Keith lives on the other side. I live on this, and we're the only 2 houses with children left. All the other people who had children, the street was not safe, and they all left.
Ken,
So
are you on here?
I am, and Jeff, I really appreciate everything here, and thank all you guys for joining us. I have a question about those posts too, the placement of those. Is there any way that it's going to be in the way of the postal delivery? If it's too close to a mailbox, the mail delivery person is going to have to do some fancy swerving to get around that.
Yeah. No, good point. I'll say a word about someone else mentioned about, trying to keep these away from houses and front doors and all that. The first thing we look at, as I mentioned, was the spacing. And so we go into it kind of in a general idea of where we would like to have a speed cushion. Then we kind of come down to the street view and say, well, we can't put it exactly where we want to because there's a driveway there, there's a mailbox there, there's something that precludes us from it. But we try to stay as close to it, but we're always looking at, we'll never put, we don't, our one policy is we don't put any speed cushion closer than 15 feet from a driveway. You guys have a lot of frontage, a lot more than we see in other places. Some streets it's one driveway right after the next. It feels like it's very hard to fit some in. You guys have more frontage than that, so I think we can keep those significantly further than 15 feet apart. We'll maximize that. And then, yeah, we also look at, can we kind of put this on a property line or in front of a big tree, that sort of obscures it from the resident's door or whatever. I don't know why. I just feel like we do the best we can to keep it as obscure as we can, except for the people on the street. Mailboxes and postal deliveries certainly comes into play there. I don't think we'll have any problem staying well clear of driveways and mailboxes, but yeah, just know we do always look at that and try to consider those kind of things.
By the way, Jeff, Ken there that's speaking is the president of the HOA on Oaks Drive.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so with the same thing in mind, when we have visitors or even residences parking on the street and there are cars blocking the bike lanes, and I'll tell you right now, our street looks like a parking lot because of all the ice on the street.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you have anything to do with getting us on the list for having our street treated with brine or whatever. But we have a parking lot up in that cul-de-sac area right now because people trying to go up and taking a ride on Fox Ridge, they're sliding back down, they're sliding over the median, they're sliding into the bike lane, trying to get up Fox Ridge right now. Now, this is obviously not a everyday occurrence to have all the ice on the road here, but I was just curious about the lanes, because there's a lot of cars parked, and they had to pull over and walk up to the apartments because they can't get up the hill, and so they're blocking the bike lanes now. And I'm just curious about these posts. I know that they're effective, but I'm afraid that some of them might get hit by some of these cars during an icy situation. Are these flexible?
They are flexible, so they'll get hit and they'll spring back up. But you know, one reason we never know what kind of reaction we're going to get when we show these, because there are some neighborhoods, I'll just tell you, say we don't want those things because we see what they look like downtown and they look terrible. You know, those things are getting hit. And those things are getting hit multiple times. I don't think we'll be dealing with that here. When you guys have a very straight street, I don't think we'll be dealing with some of the issues and maintenance issues of those things get hit and they look bad and they look junky over time. But they do spring back. You know, they can take a hit. You don't want to hit them with your car, but
Sure.
if you do, it's not gonna tear your car up. Probably startle you, but they do come back. I don't think we'll have that. I think the Pat, going back to your parking consideration, which is a good one, you won't be able to park directly at the location of the speed cushion. But other than that, there's really no change to how the street works. If people are parked in the lane now, I'm not saying that's a good thing, but if they are, they will still continue to be able to do that. And we just try to have as little footprint as we can, other than slowing traffic down. I know people probably put their trash cans out, and they got brush that has to be picked up and all that kind of stuff. So
It's true.
the more we put out there, the more considerations for all of those kind of services we have to pay attention to. So we try to do a minimal.
And those poles do pop back up, Ken. I run over them at Chick-fil-A all the time.
Are
Well,
these
they're a deterrent.
Yeah. Are these easily removed when we get our street resurfaced?
Yeah, they are, and that's another thing NDOT really likes about them. Anything that we would put down is modular. It's bolted down, and it can be unbolted and brought back up. And so, yeah, it doesn't preclude anything from happening in the future. It's a pretty good way to go about it.
So you were saying earlier, Jeff, that as far as a dividing line down the middle of the street on this particular street here is not a good idea.
I wouldn't recommend it. I don't think you need it. I think here is one of those instances where it just sort of it already kind of feels narrow from the pavement markings that you have. I think once we do this treatment, it's going to be even more that way. And so I really don't think it's going to result in significantly slower speeds, and it may just kind of communicate the opposite. That it is a higher volume, faster street. So.
And then also where the speed humps are put, the three on the road there, is there a sign in each one of them that says speed hump?
The policy is, I'll show you the sign assembly in just a second. The policy is, if this is NDOT's policy, if you can enter the street, anytime you can enter the street, we want you to see a sign before you drive over a speed cushion. So
gotcha.
As I count them, there's 3 intersections here. Other than Old Hickory Boulevard, there's Kristen Lane 1, Kristen Lane 2, and then Fox Ridge Drive, which would typically mean we would sign the first one in both directions from Old Hickory Boulevard. We wouldn't sign the second one, and we would sign the Fox Ridge end only in the eastbound. Should be northbound. By the way, north is to the right here, so in the northbound direction. If you think we need to sign all 3, I think we can probably do that. The sign assembly looks like this picture in the upper right-hand corner here. It says speed cushions with a 20-mile-an-hour plaque below it. Sometimes we will go ahead and sign all. Again, that becomes on that edge. It's a little different here because of all the bike lane and shoulder, but on a street like you're seeing right here, nobody's going to run over that steel sign, and so that keeps people from kind of meandering off the side of the road there to go around. So sometimes it's a good blocker as well.
Yeah, it totally makes sense that, the two at the corners would have the sign. I think they pretty much get the idea when they get to that third one.
Yeah, I think so. Probably we would just sign the beginning and end on that.
Jeff, one question I have is for Kristen Lane. So the speed cushion in between the Kristen Lane 1 and 2, do you foresee any traffic using Kristen Lane as a bypass around that first one? I'm worried.
I can't imagine it. I mean,
I hope not, but there
yeah.
may be that potential that somebody knows there's 3 here, and it's like, well, man, if I could turn down Kristen Lane and bypass that one, that's one less one that I have to deal with.
Yeah, people ask about does this push traffic to other streets? Sometimes, but I mean, this is one you look at it, like if somebody actually thought that was faster to turn and go up and around Kristen Lane, as narrow as it is, it would boggle the mind. But that's as much as I can say. I would certainly not expect it and hope not.
I would venture to say that way better than the average traffic that runs up and down Oaks Drive are not residents of Oaks Drive.
Sure.
Because I mean, you can almost just sit there in your diagram there and count, the homes off of Oaks Drive there, and it's people that are coming out of those apartments, I would say, or either they're cutting through. They think it's a cut through, and they may get ahead of about 2 cars on Old Hickory Boulevard. If they're trying to get over there to head east at rush hour on Old Hickory Boulevard, it really gets clogged up down through there on Old Hickory Boulevard at rush hour for sure. So, but yeah, I love the idea. I think that it would solve a lot of our problems on volume of traffic and the speed that the folks come down through here and would respect it a lot more, knowing that there's children. And because I mean, they see people, as William says, he's walking, I run. There's all of us folks are out there. It doesn't deter them to go flying past us. I never walk with my back to the traffic ever. So, but yeah, it's just, it's dangerous speeds, and we're all just concerned, that we don't want anything, anybody getting hurt here.
Dennis just said something that made me think of another question. There are certain neighborhoods in Belmead where, to encourage citizens to walk on the correct side of the road, i.e. facing traffic, in the bike lanes, they have a little picture of the bicycle with the arrow that points this way and a picture of a pedestrian with an arrow pointing that way. Is that something that we could look into again, just to have our people kind of going the right way and keeping an eye on traffic? Is that even a thing anymore?
It's possible. I think I don't know how NDOT views this bike lane. I mean, sometimes the bike lane people get pretty particular about how you sign it and how you use it and so forth. They certainly don't want people parking in it, but walking in it surely is understood. There was a project by you over by Granbury School on a street called San Marcos a few years ago, and they did kind of a path. They had a pretty wide street too. They put a path on one side of that, and I think it does have both pedestrian and bicycle marking in it. So I mean, it's certainly something that can be done. I don't know that we would do it as part of this project, but I can kind of put it on the list of stuff to ask their technicians and their engineers, in addition to the speed limit sign that you noted, and the make sure there's something about no outlet that it's visible. I can add that to it. Is there a pedestrian marking here that might help?
So I've asked a few of my traffic engineering colleagues about this because when I started walking this every day during COVID, I've noticed people will walk on the wrong side of the road. I mean, there's state laws, you have to walk against traffic. But the issue is people will walk however they feel the safest. If they live on one side of the road, they may just walk on one side of the road back and forth and not cross over to face traffic. So even if we do some type of marking for pedestrians, you're still going to have a lot of people walk the way they feel the safest.
Yeah,
I think that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Good point. And I know that dog walkers, we typically cross when we know we're going to be passing another dog. So we zigzag because of that.
That's true.
Yeah.
Very true.
You've watched me
Yes.
do that.
Marita, and I'd like to say something. I think I love the bulb out on that William talked about going from Oaks Drive on right onto Fox Ridge and on the other side of that for Fox Ridge coming down. And I want to know, Jeff, thank you for everything, but I want to know, is there another step we need to do to move on that, a formal step that had, to get all this started, or do you, can you add that to this project if you guys see fit to do that? Or do you have something else?
Yeah, that's a great question, and kind of moves us into the next part of the presentation, which is to kind of let you guys know where we're going from here. And so I'll come back to that specifically, but let me talk about our next steps. I know this is probably overcomplicating this little diagram, but we're here at this red circle, the neighborhood meeting. And what we will do after tonight is go in and finish our design. What you saw there is just a concept. We will be developing full design plans that will show exactly where the speed cushions are proposed, and the delineators and how we'll place them and all that kind of stuff. As part of that, we'll develop a plan for that bulb out area. I feel pretty sure we can do it. Everything that we do has to run through NDOT's approval process, but I think it sounds like a good idea, and we're hearing that from a lot of you. So I think it's something we'll try to work into that. And then after that design process, we kind of leave this up to you guys. We can come back to another meeting. It used to be we had 2 mandatory meetings, but what we were finding on a whole lot of these projects is we would come back to the second meeting. It was pretty much what we had already showed them in the first meeting, and everybody said, "Well, man, you just spent 2 months and we're seeing the same thing." And so what we are doing now, because we've got these additional neighborhoods and trying to expedite this a little bit, we move straight from the design into the ballot process, which I'm going to talk to you in just a second on that as well. And don't do a second meeting. We're glad to come back and do it, be happy to, but if it's where, we can design that and then show you the design as part of that ballot, and you guys vote on it, we're happy to do that too and kind of move the process along a little bit. What happens is we'll do the design process. We will post those online, and then you guys can look at them. You can pull them up. You can zoom in. You can see exactly what we're planning to do before you do the voting on it. So you'll have access to that design. So anyway, that's how the process goes. That's the formal step. If you want another meeting, you guys can decide right now and tell me, and we'll be glad to get you in that queue to do that. But that'd probably be the only thing we'd really be looking at. Would be
Jeff, question. So 8 to 10 months is construction, according to this chart, correct?
Yeah, that's the bad news.
Well, no, I'm not so concerned about the time. What I'm curious about is that after the construction and, a little bit of time passes and we notice that, maybe this would also help. Maybe it's not working like we were hoping it would. So do we continue this project past construction with updating or tweaking it a little bit? Or do we have to submit a new application to alter the end construction? How does that work?
Yeah, I wouldn't say we walk away from it, but we're pretty close to wanting to walk away from it just because, you know, as I mentioned, we got 85 neighborhoods. That's in this latest one. We're still working with probably 60 or 70 trying to finish their projects. So, and we got more coming. You know, we'll have another announcement here in a couple of weeks for the next 25 neighborhoods. This is a process that just has a lot of participants, and so I'm going to just tell you straight up. Once this project goes in, it's going to be. Fortunately, we've not had the need to go back out and readdress things, but it's going to be. It's not an iterative process. I don't want you to think that, you know, we can put a kind of a lesser in, and then the city will come back and add more if we need it. We're going to do our dead level best to give you the project that's going to work and is not too heavy and is not too light, but it's just right. And we've got a pretty good track record, I think, of doing that. But if there's something out there that's creating a safety issue that we just absolutely did not foresee, obviously that's different. You know, that there would be some comeback on that. But you know, I would say if we have an idea for something that we need now, we probably need to try and get that in on the front end.
As far as like skipping to the what would be the skip to the online ballot, Jeff?
Mm-hmm.
I'm all for that. This is Keith Cummings.
Let me talk a little bit about that online ballot. I've got another one of these in 15 minutes. I want to be sure we cover this. So there's an online ballot process that is required. We're going to send these cards out. I'll show you who's eligible voters in just a second. But if you're an eligible voter, we're going to send this card out, much like you may have gotten a card for this meeting. It's going to have a little bit of a different QR code that's going to take you to a voting page where you'll be able to tell us who you are and if you're voting for or against the project. It will also take you to those design plans. Anybody has access to those, but you'll be able to see all of that all together. Pretty simple, you know. We leave that process open for 6 weeks, and then at the end of that 6 weeks, we pull all of those respondents, and if 2/3 of them have voted for the project, we'll move it forward. That's of the people that vote. That's not the entire street. There's not a number of votes we're looking for here. It's just of whoever votes. 2/3 of them have to be in favor of it. The people that get to vote.
Quick,
Yeah,
quick.
go ahead. Sure.
So you're saying folks with Oaks Drive addresses?
Not necessarily. So here's who gets to vote. This is just a snapshot. The policy is, and there's almost always some questions about this, but the policy is that we allow the property owner, not necessarily the resident, it's the owner of the property who abuts the right of way of the project that we're doing. If you own property that is abutting Oaks Drive, you get to vote. So therefore, there are some people who back up to Oaks Drive. Their address is Kristen Lane, but they back up to Oaks. We're going to ballot those folks. And then there are people I know on Kristen Lane that absolutely use Oaks every day just as much as any of you do, that won't get that just because their property does not abut the project. All of is it Brentwood Trace? That's the condominiums right there at the corner of Old Hickory and Oaks. All of those are individual owners of their condo units, but the thing there is they all own in common that property that does abut Oaks, and so we do ballot all of those owners of those units. Same thing for the.
Jeff, I don't understand, Jeff, why the people living on the west side of Kristen Lane don't have the right to vote on this, because the only access they can get to is off of Oaks Drive. I mean, they may as well just be like a condo complex on Oaks Drive, just like the one across the street from it.
So,
Yeah.
so Ken, I I think Jeff was tired of hearing from me all my emails about it, and he explained it great to me that apparently this policy's been around and it's been approved by the council, that it's something to make things simple on how this does. That way there's no interpretation or judgment calls on who can participate in this. And I've come to grips with it because I'm on the backside of Kristen. I don't get a vote in this. I'm just
Right.
I'm a transportation engineer, so I'm trying to make sure it's done right, and I have a little bit of input since I walk up and down the roadway. So,
And we
uh,
appreciate that. We appreciate
so yeah, I don't get a vote, but no, Jeff's been great about explaining that to us. That yeah, it would be nice since our outlet is onto Oaks Drive, but
both of them.
um, yeah,
So,
both of them are there, but it kind of it is what it is. So
Here's what we see in some streets. You know, the street itself that has been requested for traffic calming. There are a few people that live along it, but it's basically a conduit for a bunch of cul-de-sacs that come off of it. And so all of those people, I'm not saying this one is like that. Kristen is like one small example, but you can imagine there are some streets that just have one after the next of cul-de-sacs with a bunch of people living on them.
sure.
Those often, again, this is not Kristen, but those often are the people that are contributing to the speeding problem, and they're kind of naturally inclined against it. And at the same time, they don't see the impacts because they don't live on the street. They don't see the impacts of the speeding the way the people that live on it do. They don't see that school bus getting past because they're not looking out their window at it every day. And so that's why we really limit it to the people that are
Okay.
really fronting the property. I know it's imperfect. I totally see the argument against it, but that's a big part of the reason.
That's all right. I don't think it's going to make any difference in the ballot process because I think we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
So,
quick.
do we
Sorry.
know? I'm sorry. Do we know that number of residents who actually, as far as dwellings, exactly how many folks on this get to vote on it? Is it like 40 something? I'm kind of counting about 40 something.
Yeah, I can tell you, it's
And
it's
it has to,
essentially the same mailing list I did for this meeting. Yeah, we'll put together that mailing list.
I was going to say,
I think we've shared the addresses. I can send you a list of the addresses if you want.
well, I was just kind of
I know.
trying to get the 2/3 on how many out of the, what do you say, William, 40 something? Is that what we're talking about, or do you know, Jeff, exactly the number that you mailed out?
Now, if I lose you here, I'm trying to switch over if I can get out of this presentation. If I lose you here, bear with me. But I'll look real quick.
I was going to say the 7 Kristen Lane properties, 4 of those are rentals, and two of those have one owner, the same owner. So I don't know how.
Yeah.
I know I know they'll probably get mailed to whatever the mailing address is at the county.
That's right.
The owner's address, not the physical mailing address, but the owner's address.
Well, Kathy and Mrs. Kennedy both own their houses. So.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
I'm like Ken. I don't think that we're going to have any kind of an issue of 2/3 at all. I look for it to be a lot higher than that.
I was going to. Can I get clarification? The policy says if there's somebody who is abutting the project and they don't vote, that's a no vote, correct?
What?
No. They just don't vote. They don't count. They don't count one way or the other. We only look at the votes we get back.
That's good because
2/3 of those in favor.
some of the property
don't vote,
owners
it's just
that are
like general election.
landlords, some of the landlords, they probably don't even care, or they may not even,
That's right. They're probably not going to vote.
Right.
If there are exactly 50 addresses that I have. Now I haven't gone back in. Sometimes we'll go back in and make sure we don't send them to vacant lots and things like that. I'm a little more liberal here on who we invite to these meetings, but I'll go in and we'll take a little bit of a closer look, make sure there's a house on it or whatever, and then send those. But yeah, it looks like right at 50. If an owner owns more than one property, they only get one vote. And then we don't. I don't think you have any commercial property on this street, so it doesn't apply. But yeah, there's 50. Is what I see.
Okay, thanks for that, Jeff.
Jeff, do we need to vote tonight about whether we want a second meeting or not?
Just let me know if a couple of you say no, I'd really like to see it again. We're going to kind of opt to do the second meeting. We don't want anybody to feel like they're shut out of this, but you know, we'd like to move it along. Here's the other thing I can do. If you want to, like in the chat, if you want to put your email address and have me send you the plans, or you want to kind of coordinate offline without having to schedule another meeting, I'm happy to do that too. Kind of give you an advanced look, and you can let me know if you've got any comments. We could do it that way. Don't mind that. But yeah, that's
Ken, what's your thoughts on another meeting? I mean, as far as my vote, I'm one of the advocates of this or whatever. I'm all for this as soon as possible. So
Right. So the ballots that are going to go out, are they going to include the plan, or is the plan coming out before the ballots?
it all comes out about the same time. I mean, we're not going to send the ballots out without you being able to see what the plan is.
Right.
So it'll all come out about the same time. Ken, if you wanted me to send you the plan, for instance, and you distribute it to the HOA members, I don't know why we couldn't do that, and then and let me know if you've got any comments, or I can just put them all out at the same time. I mean, I don't think there's going to be anything there that's probably going to flip somebody's vote one way or the other, but
Okay.
Jeff, I have a question.
Sure.
So let's say you've got the plan and we have our second meeting and we all say, no, we want the speed bump 5 feet to the left. Can the plan be changed by the homeowners once the plan is made at the second meeting?
Yeah, it could, but I mean,
I
if
don't
we're down to
anticipate that. I'm just asking.
yeah, we've never had that, but I mean,
I
that's
would
why
like
we're
a
kind of
second
like it.
meeting just so that we can all see the plan together at once.
I think that's a good idea too.
And I'd like to be able to make sure everyone sees what the Fox Ridge intersection, if we do some tubular markers there as well, it'd be nice to have on the plan. People could see that.
But
Definitely.
Jeff did say that he could send out the plan basically with the ballot at the same time. Would that be the best way to go on this?
To expedite it, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, it would be to expedite it, but if you guys have concerns and you think, well, we may want to ask to modify something after we see the plan, then you probably don't want the ballots coming out right then.
Well, that's true. That's true.
So if you have a sense that you want more feedback on the plan, let's just do another meeting. Or I can send it and you can tell me if you've got any feedback.
As long as it doesn't alter the timeline too much.
Yeah, I'm with that.
I'm like I mentioned, I've got to get on another call here for Page Road. Their first meeting was the first week in November, so it's taken 2 months to get back to them.
Yeah.
But,
So it's possibly 2 extra months on an 8 to or almost a year-long project to even get this to construction.
That's right.
So,
I don't know if you'll notice. That's right. Yeah, it's not like it's going to happen before Easter anyway.
Yeah, I'm for moving along as fast as we can with seeing the project, the outline of the project, and then with a vote. What do you think on that, Ken?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Anybody else?
Let me put this up, and I'm putting this up to everybody. If Ken, especially, you want to coordinate more after that, that's my email address. Feel free to do that. But yeah, otherwise we'll plan on just kind of doing that traditional way of going about it, and we'll work and schedule another meeting and show you the plan. We'll talk through the plan at that point.
And I don't think another meeting is necessary. I'm with actually seeing the plan and then voting on it. But versus,
Disagree.
you know, oh, you do?
Yeah, I would like to have another meeting with everybody so we can all, you can't just walk up and down the street and talk to one person. I think if we all are together, the meeting doesn't have to be that long, but all of us seeing it together, I think is easier, especially on Ken. But I would like all of the neighbors to have input at the same time.
Although it puts it would put the plan behind as far as like construction for the speed bumps a couple of months, right?
This is
Well,
the
no, that
city
would be
talking.
I'd like to say that, especially with these type engineering things, sometimes it's very wise to spend an extra month or two hammering out the details to make sure it's right in order to rush instead of rushing something to get it done. That way we look at it, make the comments, and it's done by the book.
Yeah, because they're not going to come back soon and fix something. We got to get it right before they do it.
Yeah, and that's true from our standpoint as well. If we've got any concerns from any one person, I think we owe it to them to let's circle back and we'll do another meeting. That is totally okay. Again, I've got to hop off here and join this other meeting and get it started. This is our link to our webpage there. If you got any other, want more information about traffic calming, it's there available. But feel free to reach out to me or that NDOT traffic calming webpage. Again, this is being recorded. We'll post it here in the next couple of days.
Okay.
Anything else before I have to hop off?
Thank you so much for everything, Jeff.
Yes, absolutely. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank y'all. I appreciate your attendance here tonight. Sorry, I've got a double header here tonight. But again, thanks for everyone, and we'll look forward to talking to you soon.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.